Welcome to
Block.
Triple Blockheads,
Back set. Block down.
the podcast for all things volleyball.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Triple Blockheads. Makani, Frank, Mark, we're here and we're going to be talking about that mid-season period where you guys got to try to get over the hurdle, continue to develop, and then get into that end of that season, whether you postseason, nationals, etc., whatever level it is. But it seems like every volleyball season is long. Months-wise, maybe not so much in college and high school, but man, everyday practices, the daily grind from preseason and that transition into actual competitive play. And then there's that period of time while you're kind of looking ahead in the next 4 or 6 weeks with the actual end goal, right? Whether it be the national tournament, whether that be conference tournament or postseason play, or maybe it's the, AAUs or, junior JOs or whatever it might be. So we want to talk about how we can get over that hump, how we can continue the development of our athletes, keep it fresh, keep it creative, inject some energy. So let's start in the development portion in club. So Frank, club's long. I mean, November to June, July, right? In some cases, what are you seeing in that period of time where, maybe late March, April, where there's this kind of lull?
Yeah, I think some of the coaches that are listening to this are probably already in that lull. But I think if you're not with your team yet and maybe you're just getting started, I think there's things that you can do to prevent it from happening at all. But if you are in that lull, do we want to start there? Like if you're
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, if we are in that lull right now, I think there's probably some things we can do in practice planning to just kind of freshen things up. So if you already had maybe a warm-up that you do all the time, or you're someone that just changes your warm-up every practice, maybe you don't even start with volleyball. Maybe you play some dodgeball to start. You play some kickball. You just change the game. Make the volleyball space just something different than doing a volleyball skill right away. I like to play golf, because I like playing golf in general. So I'll make like 4 imaginary holes around the gym. So maybe one of the holes is you have to bump the ball and it has to hit the top of the antenna. So how many strokes does it take to do that? Maybe you find a way to throw a partner in there so you both are playing the hole together. But yeah, just like trying something practice planning wise to re-change things a bit. Maybe you stop doing team practices. Maybe you run positionals for a couple weeks. So you say, hey, the first 30 minutes, the first hour of practice, I just want the setters and middles to come in. Or you just want the pins to come in with the DSs or something. So maybe you change like who's coming to the gym. Maybe you give some of the players just a night off. Or you have them come in with a different team because they might need some extra middles or something. So maybe socially you change the dynamics too. I think if you're in it, I think you just got to do something opposite of what you've been doing. Something new. So if you haven't been playing against a lot of teams in practice, maybe you set up some sort of intra-gym tournament. Yep. Or you do some sort of outsides tournament where all the outsides are playing against each other. I've done it with a young team. I don't know if this is a good idea anymore, but I did a week. I'm interested to hear you guys' perspective on it. I did a week's worth of practices where I took a couple players and put them with a partner, groups of 3 or something, and they had to come up with their own drill and teach it to the players, and we did their drill for 20 minutes or whatever, and then I got to grade it or something, give them feedback on their drill, which is I think also kind of an interesting perspective for the players to have sometimes on like it is kind of hard talking about a drill and getting something you want out of it, and maybe it helps them when we start doing drills again, gives them a greater perspective for what maybe the coach is trying to accomplish. So those are just some initial ideas if you're already in that space right now.
Yeah, the ultimate goal, right, is to break the monotony that is, right? So I think you're spot on with doing something new. I think player-led practices are a good way, right? You want to inject some energy, some fun. There's some 2-ball drills. There's butt ball, underwater volleyball, like all these games available. Like you can look online, but I think non-specific volleyball touches are important. Adding a wrinkle in that way, I think giving players some ownership to have the practice they want, really important. And then I think that the tournament style is a really fun thing to do for a week, whether it's a doubles tournament or you're doing a Queen of the Beach type of thing where you're constantly shifting partners and playing mini games. Like any of that stuff just lets them release from the stressors of a season. Maybe you're not having the success that you want, or you've already qualified and now we're just kind of going through the motions until nationals. I think that's a great way to keep it fresh and keep them developing without maybe realizing that they're doing it in a different way.
I think separating those two, I think you have a different philosophy maybe with the team that already has a bid that's kind of waiting for the tournament, and then one that doesn't have a bid and you're kind of disappointed in where it's been, and you maybe have one last shot that you're trying to work towards. I think both of them, you're really just trying to keep the passion of the process, right? Because how do you keep them, and I mean, as a coach as well, right? Really passionate about continuing the process of development and the process forward. But let's talk specifically about a team in club earned the bid early, maybe in that January, early February timeframe. And now they're like just waiting, right? So they have something to play for, but really like they've accomplished their initial goal and now just waiting. Like, what are some of the things that you'd really do in the gym there?
Yeah, I think first off, if you're coaching a team that has that sort of goal, I think you got to be careful about making that one of your goals. Because if you do accomplish it early, then it's like now the girls are just like, okay, we accomplished our main goal, like we're done. You know what I mean? Now we just chill. So I don't know if you want to make that part of the culture of the group. So and I think most girls are going to have that goal though coming into the season. So it's a really good opportunity early on in the year to prevent some mid-season lull, to just talk about what is actually important. So if you do qualify early, so that could happen March, early April, and then you have the rest of April, May, June to still train. Maybe you're playing in some pre-national events, but the frequency definitely isn't as crazy as it is January, February. I think it's a great opportunity. Since you're already in, you know what you're doing for nationals, it's a great opportunity to develop more secondary, third skills with your kids. Great time of the year to maybe check in and do more one-on-one meetings with your kids and maybe give them a heads up like these events that we're going to are still super important for your exposure, still super important for college coaches seeing how you've improved in your game. And we don't want just us qualifying being the end all of us getting better in the gym. We still have, you personally as a player, still have a lot to add into your game going into these events where these college coaches are going to see you. Or if you're already committed, like staying ready for that. Like let's still add a little bit more let's still build that deep serve a little bit more into your game so that when we go to this tournament, we're going to start calling that more for you. We haven't done it in January, February, but now we have this like 3-4 week gap of training. We're going to maybe get more comfortable with that and get ready to add that into our next tournament.
I spot on. I really like for these types of teams, like you're introducing maybe a new defensive scheme, maybe a new block scheme, right? Something that's going to prepare you for something you'll see at nationals that maybe you aren't seeing right now, right? How do you keep it fresh? Maybe it's a new attack combo in the middle or a cross play or something that you haven't done that you would like to see or like to have in your toolbox. Like this is a great time, and that helps keep it fresh because they're not going through the exact same, right? Still volleyball skills, but now it's new, it's exciting. Maybe I haven't mastered it yet. I don't know exactly how to do it. So that learning process stays fresh through it. I think that's a great way to do with a high achieving team, or team that achieves early. I think another good thing is if you have the capabilities, like that allows for some film sessions, right? So you can talk a little bit more intentionally about how to improve or team system things, right? Just exposing them to something different. If that wasn't initially part of your process, that's something that they'll definitely see in college. That's a good period to try and introduce it, right? Introduce a film session process.
Yeah, and to that point, specifically, we were just talking about these high-performing teams. A lot of times you're focusing early in club on technique, system, the play on the court. I also think this is a really good opportunity to take I was going to go with the film part 2, just more from IQ. All right. You really develop the IQ part and then bring that IQ development onto the court in your training. Then it becomes kind of a dual-purposed training methodology, right? I also love the fact that you need more things in your toolbox. If you've succeeded one way, as you continue to progress and play better teams, they're going to figure out that way to stop you. So how are you going to have multiple defenses that you can change into? How are you going to have multiple offensive focuses? Hey, I'm going to go and we usually go inside out because all of our terminal individuals are in the middle. All right, well, if they have gigantic people in the middle, we need to figure out how we can go outside and work the pins and establish that first. So how do you do that in a way that is going to be different for you because you've succeeded going inside out the entire time, whether that be in serve receive or free ball or in transition. So I think really focusing on areas where we want you to do it this way, just for you know that you can.
Yeah,
and it's familiar. It becomes familiar, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what about the opposite, which I think is there's not as many people making the national tournament, right, relative to how many clubs that we have.
Yeah.
So I think this is probably more relevant to more of our listeners around, hey, we haven't gotten a bid. We may have just kind of plateaued, or maybe the athlete or the coach or the parents may feel like we're kind of in this stale space. What are some of the tips to try to get them re-energized and back on the path?
I think it's the same thing. You're just maybe doing it at a different time, because you're probably realizing this more in February, March than April, May. But I think just trying to add some new concepts is really, I think it's the same thing. I really think it is all about making sure you have the right goals to start off with, so you can prevent the plateauing. You know what I mean? But yeah, if you're in season right now, if you're a coach listening, you're in season right now and you haven't earned a bid yet and you're at the point of the season where maybe that's not looking likely, I think you got to do whatever you can in training and in your conversations with players to motivate them about just what their long-term goal is and trying to make sure you mix that into practice, and as a coach, not letting your tone or your attitude change all of a sudden when you're not going to go reach your team goal. If your goal was to go earn a bid, you know what I mean? Like being true to your values as a coach, that we're in this for the long term, to make you a better volleyball player, to get you prepared for maybe next year's tryouts. So maybe you change your practices a bit to be a little more skill acquisition instead of team systems, you know what I mean? So now it's more like large group, lessons, I guess is what we're going to call it.
I feel like the difference between those groups is the sense of urgency, right? And the players feel that too. All right, we only have one qualifier left, or two. You know what I mean? We only have one shot to get this, and it's in 2 weeks. So how do you keep it light and fun but still focused in what we're doing? You know what I mean? And I think it's harder to introduce brand new schemes, concepts in that point, because we're still trying to master in things, but you can definitely offer a few tweaks. We can work on, I think, individual skills in a little bit more detailed manner that are going to directly lead to points. Like if I'm working with outsides, I'm going to try and help them expand their range a little bit more, or work on shot, tool, you know what I mean? Stuff that's going to directly relate to points. In a little bit different manner than if we qualified early and we're exploring, right, what we can do. Yeah. That feels a little bit different in that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think I think the opportunity in that scenario where you have a team that's kind of just stale, hasn't really accomplished their goals yet, they're just it feels like we're kind of going through the motions is the bigger opportunity as a coach. It's where you separate the coaches that are able to be confident in their own ability and also confident to ask for help. I think one of the things that I have seen and I've done myself is ask one of your mentors or ask a peer. And words matter.
Or listen to a podcast.
Buckets.
So words matter, and people use different words. And sometimes just those different words just take an athlete from being, hey, I really don't know what's happening. You keep saying the same thing, into, oh, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Super frustrating because they're like, that's what I said the whole time. But it just takes that different variation. I think in this scenario, finding some level of success is just vitally important. Mm-hmm. I think it's the foundation of building back into a process of progression and, that passion for that process, as I mentioned earlier. That I agree with you, Mark. Independent success, I think sometimes that has to happen. How do you find individuals to do something good, and then you can build on each other on how that really works out. But I think to your point earlier, you have to do something different. I think making it fun is one thing, and I think you have to do that because they're kids. But again, I think refocusing them on how to find success on the court individually and then collectively is just important to turn it around. I'm a big believer that the season is never lost in the middle. There's always wins and value and progression and progress to be had if you're still playing volleyball. And I think there's too many times where, especially in club, there's a lot of parents paying a lot of money. And if we're just kind of going through the motions, I think that's a detriment to just the product and the investment.
Yep. Totally agree. What do you guys think in the beginning of the season coaches could do more of to prevent those, like, regardless of you qualify or not? Like, how do you is there anything you do, like, framework wise to make sure that there is no real lull?
You've brought it up a couple times, but goal setting. I think how you go about setting your goals for the season is really, really important. I think the other thing that's really important is defining success. What does success mean for your team? And making sure that your players are a part of both of those processes is really, really important.
Yeah.
So when you get to that middle of the season lull, we can find success that isn't necessarily wins. You know what I mean? The success is you got to base and hit your release every time. We were disciplined in our block scheme. You know what I mean? Like, find those, however you define success, absolute effort after a play. She dives over by the chairs trying to save a ball that she wasn't going to get to. That's success, and then you got to really celebrate those types of things. Own whatever that is for you, that success, however you define it, whatever your team goals are, and then keep going. And I think an important thing that kind of falls to the side at times is, all right, so we meet and we talk about what success is and we set these goals, and then we don't really talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Have your, like, on your practice plan or your whiteboard or however you do it, I would definitely write out success is 100% effort, commitment to your teammates, celebrating each other, whatever it is. Write that out. Write out what your goals are and how you're going to go about it, right? So to me, the goal setting piece is you have your big picture end goal of the season. Maybe you have process goals, and then I would even have individual goals for them as well. I want to get to this point. I want to be able to do this X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And then the important thing with goal setting is laying out the framework, the ground, the steps it takes to get to that point. So if you ever feel lost or you're in a lull, you can reflect back on those steps that are going to get me to the thing that I want, and that can be a refocusing tool as well. But I think between giving your players input on defining what success means and what your goals are going to be, that ownership can eliminate some of the lulls or allow you to break out of them quicker when you feel like you get into them in that March, April space.
Because it's a familiar term or statement, an affirmation almost, that you can come back to it because, oh yeah, that's where we're going, right? If you're establishing those things and you're making them routine, like you can always bring those back, and I think it becomes a trigger to get back on track.
Absolutely.
I love that, and I think here's one thing for all those club coaches that are out there, because it is a long season. We talk about being planful for practice. I'm a big believer of being extremely intentional and planful for your season. So I see all too many times where, hey, that first tournament, they're running all kinds of random stuff. Like you went from 0 to 100, you went from 101 to 801 class right in the first month of practice. And I think those are the teams that kind of plateau and kind of get that lull because you're like, all right, now I'm going to go backwards.
Yeah.
If you have a roadmap, and this is coming from the guy who does process and things in my normal job, right? So, of course, I'm talking about process, engineering, and roadmaps. But anyways, if you have your roadmap on, hey, here's where we're starting, and then here's every step of the way, like the progression collectively, system-wise, as well as individual-wise. I want my outsides to do this at the beginning. Then I want to evolve to this, and then to this, and then to this. Don't make it time-bound. Go through them as they succeed those steps. So if you have an elite level team, you might go through those steps a little faster. So it becomes still fresh and new and challenging them. Mm-hmm. If you have one that has more opportunity, I mean, it's a 2s or 3s team, then you're progressing to them a little slower, but they're progressing in that manner, right? So that when you get to the middle of the season, there's still things to learn. There's the next step. There's the next wrinkle. And I think when you're planful that way, you have an ability to then communicate that more clearly. I think especially young athletes, young people in general, I feel like they feel more comfortable when there's an actual plan. And I think that's why we talk a lot about when we talk about planning practice of communicating the plan, because they will do better if they know what the plan is. So I think for you as a coach, looking at the aggregate plan is very, very important.
Yeah.
Do you have an aggregate plan, Frank?
Yeah, so there's
win.
What is it? Tell me.
Processing. There is a couple things that I want to happen right away in the season. So some serve and pass concepts, some middle connection concepts. But then from there, like when we talk about step by step, I really like involving the players in what they think the next step should be, and like them starting to now systematically think about things, especially when you're thinking about only practicing twice or 3 times a week. Like, I think you wanna supercharge like your team a bit, especially in the system that we play in, right? Like all these issues that we're talking about is created by the club system. Like when the qualifiers happen, when the high exposure events happen, when the recruiting process contact stuff happens, like sometimes coaches feel like they have to skip steps because we play in 3 weeks. And even though I know I want to maybe follow that, maybe that map makes the most sense long term, it's like these parents are also playing for their team to be ready to play, So you almost feel like you have to supercharge some of the progressions, and some of that isn't always great, but there are opportunities to do things more efficiently when you involve your players and part of the decision-making process, especially when it comes to like concepts, right? Like if we're teaching a blocking scheme that is new to everyone, like I'm not going to maybe just go out there and tell them to move this way. I'm going to give them the problem and be like, how do you think coaches try and solve this problem? Well, how would we solve this problem? And then it creates dialogue, creates conversation, kind of gives me the answer of what step they should be on. You know what I mean?
I think the dialogue is the important thing, right? Get them talking.
Yep.
And then you can just interject your teachings as you were going to, but they feel a little bit differently about the ownership over it.
For sure.
Even if you don't take their advice.
Yeah.
Just do whatever.
And it's interesting to see where they're at, like
Yes.
IQ wise for sure.
Also.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is real, right? Where in the beginning of the year, you still want to succeed, right? I'm a big believer of like aim small, miss small. So, I mean, if you give them the playbook, it's kind of like a rookie quarterback in the NFL, right? Not to change sports, but you hear it all the time. Like, hey, you're a rookie quarterback. You're going to come in and, hey, we're going to cater and we're going to go this third of the playbook. And we're going to excel at this third of the playbook. And once that happens, we're going to continue to add to that playbook. And that's the same philosophy, right? Is how do you ensure that you are giving them points of success? Because we all know that they're going to be more passionate about learning, passionate about developing when they're actually seeing some level of success.
Yeah, the club season's so weird, right? Like, you might not play any qualifiers at all because you want to take the AAU track. So, like, you're going to nationals no matter what. So the way you frame your season for that is way different than how you'd frame it if you're going to qualifiers. And, like, for most of our teams, because of where we're located at, in the Midwest, it's like you want to play probably a mixture of both if you're trying to get the most competition you can. So you're playing in some JVA events, you're playing in some AAU events. You're trying to qualify, but if you don't, you can still go play open at AAU. So you're still getting a really good tournament at the end of the year for nationals. So it's like, what does your season look like? And like framing your team conversations around that is really, really important. It's probably different than high school where you're gonna have a set schedule and then everything gets crazy at the end of the year where things start to really matter. Like you're a fall season team, like with your season being shorter than the club season. Do you guys have mid-season lulls, or like how does that look for you guys?
October is
sure.
a grind where you're into conference play. Sometimes it's just that point, right? Because even though the season starts in August, for us the season starts in January, and then they get a few weeks here and there off, but everything is working towards it. So it is longer than the actual playing season feels, with as much as they're lifting, our spring training, right? They come in summer for workouts and classes and all kinds of stuff. So October is about that time, and you feel it the exact same way, right? Either you've had that early success, how do we sustain, how do we keep tweaking? We're getting into the second round of conference. Everybody knows each other so well. What adjustments can we make? I think the thing that typically goes by the wayside is you focus so much on opponent prep instead of still improving. You know what I mean? The skill development still has to happen, and you want to be prepared for who you're playing. But that's finding that balance and still feeling like having the players feel like they're still improving, I think can kind of lead you through that space.
Yeah, I think in the collegiate space, it's the staff's role to identify when it becomes that monotony and that the performance, sometimes we're winning, sometimes we're losing, but it just doesn't feel, it's not clicking.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you identify that as the staff, I think it becomes a precipice on what is the change. It's either going to be a big change or it's going to be some level of smaller changes combined. Those smaller changes combined might be, hey, we're going to just tweak the system a little bit, or we're going to focus on how we're going to side out in a different way, or how we're going to be more. Let's leverage the stats and leverage the film, and let's focus on here. Those types of athletes, especially in a team that's going to be performing and has that IQ, it will feel different because they're focusing their mind on something different.
Yeah.
The opposite becomes true if you have we're struggling, and then it becomes the bigger change, right? Maybe it becomes we're hovering at 500, and this is not where we want to be collectively as a staff and as a player group. And our captains, we had the conversations. So maybe you have to make a change, right? Even if you're winning, sometimes you just have to make a change because it doesn't feel right. And I think as we talk about this midseason lull, like that happens at every single level. Is that how do you get yourself out of that monotony, that not meeting the full expectation, into a space where everyone involved, staff and players, have this energy of the possible. And I think that's the goal.
Yeah, that's really good. A really good way to put it, for sure. I was just say it's so wild during club because it's almost like almost so opposite of if you took a club schedule and you like compared it to high school or college schedules. It's almost like we have a non-conference game followed by a conference game, and then you have a non-conference game for two tournaments, and then you have another conference game, and then it's like the conference tournament followed by a non-conference game again. Like, it's just the ups and downs of the types of events you're potentially going to during club is just there's no rhyme or reason. You know?
I would even go a little more extreme. You're going from a conference tournament game to an exhibition game.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because let's be really honest.
Because the stakes.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter.
Yep.
So, but any final thoughts on the midseason lull? It's real.
Yeah, it's real, and everyone's gonna go through it. Hopefully, it's not in the early part of the season. You're having your lull. But I think we've all agreed that just try to keep things fresh and don't feel like you're alone in trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay to acknowledge that you're in it with the team. Like, hey, we're in a grind right now, and it kind of feels like, do you guys feel that? And it gives them an opportunity to release some of that they're feeling, right? All right, we've ID'd it. We know this is an emotion that's happening with us. It's validated. It's real. How do we go? And these are our steps, and this is the plan, and we can reflect back on our goals and success. You know what I mean? But I think it's okay to talk about it. I think if some coaches think if we don't talk about it, then it's not real.
Right.
No, it's still happening. It's happening. Like, be okay with it and work your way through it. But be transparent with your athletes, and they'll respect you for it.
Yeah. Acknowledge it. Be authentic with it. And then if you need support, tune in. Triple Blockheads. We have lots of things going on. But we also want to hear from you. So this is a good way. If you have a midseason lull, you have something that anything that you want to try out or have a suggestion or need to ask something, hit us up on your favorite social. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see ya. Blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.